Apple is finally, like John Gruber's sanction level, finally making an iPhone Fold, an iPhone book, an iBook, whatever. And as soon as this fall. And in this video, I'm going to give you two compelling reasons to wait and save for it like I am, and two equally compelling reasons, well, not to. Especially if Apple really goes through with the Shyamalan-style plot twist that could take the Fold from deal maker to deal breaker, from must flip to must skip. Now, I've been asking for an iPhone Fold for years now, years and years, like 6-7 years. You're welcome. Ever since Captain Two Folds, Michael Fisher first showed me his Samsung and Moto flip folds, and I've been using a Google Pixel Fold going on 3 years now for my day job, so I know more than a little bit about that folding life. And here's the first reason I like it like that. Tablet-sized screen in a phone-sized package. See, here's the thing. We humans, ugly bags of mostly water that we are, have been folding things for as long as we've had things to fold. Books, wallets, letters, tacos, calzones, our clothing when we pack it or put it away. We've even literally got things called folders that we fold to put other folded things into. And laptops. We've been folding laptops for basically tech ever. Game Boys, you name it. And we do it because it protects what's inside, makes it easier to carry or pocket outside. And as anyone who's ever watched the original series knows, it's just incredibly fun to open and close. Hey, open and close. Because when you're wrapping fragile things in tougher things or turning wide things into thick things, folding just makes absolutely the kind of sense that does. I won't go so far as to say the whole story of humanity is the story of foldables, but classics are classics for a reason. And when it comes to human technology, foldables are a classic. They're one of the classics, including classic phones like the StarTAC or the Motorola Razr. It was a solve for having a full screen and a full hardware keyboard. Pretty much the exact reason a laptop ended up being a notebook. But then with phones, everyone except for my friends at Clicks eventually stopped caring about hardware keyboards and started caring more and more about the fullness of those displays. Thus began the era of the full display slabs. And while they started relatively small, especially in hindsight, year after year, note after note, plus after max after ultra, and other slabs of unusual size, they just kept growing and going and growing until they really couldn't go and grow anymore, reaching the limits of just how big a screen we could cram into something small enough to still fit into the pockets of our non-hipster skinny jeans or non-Gucci clutch bags. But some still wanted more, to give the people more screen, but also more convenience. And we could not live with that failure. So where did it bring us? Back to flips and folds. Back to trading width for depth. So we can carry a Max like a Mini, or in this case, a pad like a phone. Except for that rumored plot twist I mentioned right at the top. See, the whole point of unfolding a fold is to get a bigger screen. Literally double the screen. So with the current modern iPhone aspect ratio of roughly 2:1, you'd think when it was unfolded, we'd get closer to 1:1, a square, which is fantastically more space if you're reading text on the web or an ebook, but functionally zero extra space if what you're trying to do is watch a video or movie not framed for IMAX. Huge exception being you can double up by having a video and comments or the video player in a second app, or half fold it like a laptop and use one side to prop it up while you use the other to watch. So yes, still actually more useful, just not actually more bigger, which may be why trifolds are starting to become a thing with their roughly 4:3 aspect ratio, which may be exactly why the rumors are saying Apple isn't sticking with the current modern iPhone aspect ratio of roughly 2.1, but going with something wider, an aspect ratio closer to 3:2, meaning we get an unfolded ratio closer to, wait for it, 4:3. And yes, shout out to all the old man Logan era tech boomers in the audience who remember that that's exactly the aspect ratio from back in the day of non-widescreen CRT TVs, and to all the Zoomers plus who know that's the aspect ratio of all the iPads from Mini to Pro, meaning you could reasonably think of this as less an iPhone Pro that folds open and more an iPad Mini that folds closed, sort of like what Microsoft's late unlamented Surface Duo Hingeable did, which, if true, means Apple is emphasizing the tablet-like open experience at the expense of the phone-like closed experience. unless you happen to have just loved the equally late, equally unlamented BlackBerry Passport. Now, for myself, me personally, I tend to use my foldables more closed than open, more often as a phone on the go than the side quest benefit of a tablet when stopped. But your min-max mileage may certainly vary, especially given how long Apple has been pushing universal app technologies from auto layout to Swift UI and how robust the iPad App Store is. That's what makes bits so much more forgiving than atoms, which brings us to the potential power word kill switch of all of this. Not the crease, forget the crease. Apple uses Samsung to fab their display designs like they use TSMC to fab their chipset designs, and that latest process is supposed to seriously just decease the crease, so it'll probably still be noticeable, but we won't notice it's noticeable, or something like that. Every reviewer will gotcha it from a certain light and angle when you squint just wrong, but otherwise everyone else will just be enjoying the bigger content on the daily sort of thing. But the price, in addition to the external display, the one we have on the current non-folding, unless your name is Unbox iPhone, you have the inside 2x display. Instead of one or maybe an L-shaped 3Cs thick battery, you have at least two thinner batteries split beneath both surfaces. Instead of one selfie camera and 1 to 3 main cameras, you have potentially a Severanced Audi and an Innie selfie camera, and probably not as good wide and ultra wides on the back. Not just because it isn't as easy to split and splay out the Z-index of a camera system as it is a battery system, but because it's just so hella expensive, which is why foldables have traditionally had cameras not nearly as good as their non-folding all-slab counterparts. And it's why, minimal focus depth aside, the iPhone Air camera just isn't as good as the full-on multi-camera system in the iPhone Pro, which is why I, again personally, thou shalt not pass the otherwise very cool Air for the pure giant Balrog big fire of the Pro Max cameras. But what that means is often more than the sum of all those bill of material extra and ultra thin parts. Just they really add up, especially because ultra thin. It's why the Galaxy S25 Ultra starts at $1,300, but the Galaxy Fold S7 $2,000. The Pixel 10 Pro starts at $1,000, but the Pixel 10 Pro Fold $1,800. Not quite double the phone for double the price, but not quite not that either. The iPhone 17 Pro starts at $1,100, so an iPhone Fold could easily be $1,900, $2,000 more for the base model. And sure, with trade-ins, sell-offs, discounts, payment plans, and subsidies, you may never experience the full-on sticker shock of that full-on sticker for any iPhone, foldable or not, but you'll almost certainly end up paying more for more regardless, if you can. But despite all that, maybe in spite of all that, even though last year I eschewed the shiny new Air for the trusty Maxer than ever, this year I'm pretty sure I'm going to go fold. The idea of an iPhone mid that unfolds into an iPad mini just feels so compelling, especially if Steve LeMay and team can sand down the eye-bleedingly rough edges of iOS 26 in time. If the cameras aren't too low, or the sticker price really isn't too high, unless there ends up being a double conformity gate style plot twist, and it turns out it supports the Apple Pencil, in which case, insta-buy. But subscribe and follow along to find out for sure, and hit up those comments to let me know if you're gonna fold or not to fold. That's my question.